All right. Sorry, just amusing myself emoting at a fellow tree bearder. Oh, they're asking how Dutch is going. Okay, so that's what I get for emoting at people with who I've played with a little bit on the server. Anyway, welcome to Plugging Along, a stream dedicated to LOTRO plugins. Last time on Plugging Along, we were looking at the Opaque Quest Tracker plugin. We added a lock icon to make it easier to unlock and lock the window to move it around and resize it. And today we're going to add a setting that allows the user to move where that is on the window, upper left, left, lower right, or not at all. And if everything looks good, we'll release the changes as a patch. I've got a window over here that says I've got some closed captionings on. Let me know if that is happening. I'm curious. I didn't get the little pop-up that says this is happening. So, and in the meantime, let me go ahead and rearrange some windows. So yes, as always, feel free to jump into chat with your thoughts and questions. But in the meantime, let's get started. Okay, so first of all, oh, and good, closed captionings are coming. I'm used to getting a little pop-up that says it's on, and I'm not getting that lately, but. Okay, so first of all, let's go into our plugin manager, and in here we can see the Opaque Quest Tracker. Let's load that up and remind ourselves that this is the opaque window meant to go underneath your quest log to act similar to the other opaqueness, like in the chat menu. In the chat window. So let's go ahead and put a couple of quests here. We'll go ahead and put Legendary Moria on, that more or less fills that up. And we'll go ahead and get some other Moria quests as well. Now, I do appreciate that Legendary Moria collapses down if it's not the only one there. Okay, so we've got some quests, we've got an Opaque Quest Tracker, and we can see the lock button here. We can see the window is unlocked. And if I click that, the window is now locked. I can click through it and move the camera around. Okay, that being said, let's go ahead and check out the majesty of the 21st Hall in the background and load up our to-do file from the last time. Let's go ahead and open up a new text file. And we're going to go to Documents, Lord of the Rings Online, Plugins, Cube Plugins, it's me, Opaque Quest Tracker, and we're going to go ahead and open up both the window and the to-do file. Okay, last time we can see we have a note here. What can this be opaque? And we determined that it is probably possible, but it was going to take more time than we had last time. And this is what we're working on right now. Have that option to determine which corner the lock icon appears in. Upper left is fine, but it kind of sticks out into your gameplay area. It's this random thing you might accidentally click. Lower right makes a lot of sense for me, gets it far out of the way, but not underneath the radar. Now we can see the radar itself extends far below the bubble to include all of this text underneath. So if you positioned it just right, the lock in the upper right could be fine, but you could put yourself into that problem where the radar is covering the lock. Oh, Charlotte says, greetings from work. Well, greetings to you, Charlotte. I hope you're able to do this and not be too distracted at work as well. Okay, yeah, so upper right for me would make the most sense. That's where you see a lot of icons in these windows, upper right. Let's see, any other good icons? Really just the X button. As long as we can avoid being underneath the radar, that's fine. Lower left and lower right, those seem a little odd to me. I can't imagine doing lower left, but lower right I could see being just gets it as close to away, really far away from the actual center of the play space. So we're gonna go ahead and add a section in options here. We can see we already prototyped, oh, hello, larger. We've already prototyped what this looks like. Choose the location. We're just not doing anything with those buttons. Hope you don't mind being on stream. Hobbits are adorable. I do like the Hobbit cheer and the Hobbit charge. Larger says, hi, stream. Excellent. So we've got the prototype here for the location of the lock icon. And we also have the synchronization between the two, which are very tightly bound together in the current code structure. Ideally, we would have something a little bit more loosey-goosey, but this is a very tiny plugin. And so having them bound up together like that is not the worst thing in the world, right? So doing something with these buttons and then pinning this lock icon to the appropriate spot, or not being there at all. That's the goal today. So I hope you're as excited to get that done as I am, because I want to get this thing released. Oh, and I have an extra window here. I'm going to get rid of that. Okay, so as last time, we are in windowed full screen mode while we're working on this. So if you're in graphics, you can see that there's windowed, full screen, and full screen windowed. Best of both worlds, one hopes. And that means that while this is taking up all of the monitor space on that screen, I can use on Windows, Alt Escape, to push LOTRO to the very bottom of the Z order, giving me access to any of those other windows. And in this case, that's going to be my code window, my documentation window, because I'm sure I'm going to go to that API. So LOTRO API documentation here. And when I click on LOTRO, that brings it to the top of the Z order, but Alt Escape is a keyboard shortcut that pushes it back down. Now, there's other things you could do Alt Tab to get to a single one of those windows, but generally I'm looking at LOTRO or everything that is not LOTRO. And so that keyboard shortcut to drop LOTRO to the very bottom of the stack, I'm going to be using it over and over and over. And it's just a very handy thing to keep in your mind if you're doing this kind of a situation. Now, in a more normal environment, I would probably have all that over on my second display. And so I'd be looking at the game over here and the coding over there. But single monitor setup for stream purposes. Okay, so we have an Opaque Quest Tracker. One of the things I was thinking of was there's a lot more going on in this file than we first started with. And so at some point, I think I need to split stuff out. All the language stuff should go into its own file, so the lang and the get string stuff, that should all go in, as well as the file save and load stuff, that should go into its own file. All the settings stuff, split all these out so that the stuff that's in the Opaque Quest Tracker file is more specific to Opaque Quest Tracker and not like the settings or the localizations or whatnot. That being said, we're going to move on as if that's not a problem right now. So we have the draw options control. This is what gives us the turbine.ui.control that we return when Turbine says, hey, I'm calling this get options panel to get the thing you want me to display in the plugins window. So plugins manager, options, all of this is this options control, turbine.ui control. Return that and then populate it down here. Okay, so with that, we already have those buttons. So we can search for upper left. Cool, that's already localized. Good job, past me. I don't remember doing that, but that seems like something I would do. And right now, we have that set checked. That should probably be clicked, shouldn't it? Because we were just sort of copying that previous checkbox. So that should actually be .click. Okay. Oh. Yes. No, we don't need the set checked. We don't need that. Perfect. Just remove those. And we can see right now that we do have some debug. No, we are calling change lock icon. Did we do anything with that function? Perfect. No, it's just a debug statement. All right, so if I hit upper left, I have not set up a chat window for looking at plugin stuff. So I will often do this during a stream, and then because this is my main character, I'll just delete it during the week. And so I've reached my limit in tabs, so I'm going to delete that tab and create a new tab and pull that off here. And so if you're doing plugin development, you're going to want to see the error channel and the standard channel. Standard's the only place you can spit out to as a plugin without player interaction. And an error is where you hope to never end up, but it always happens. Plugins. So I'm just going to rename that so I don't lose track of that. And I'll stick it down here in the bottom right for now. So if I hit the upper left, we see UL, upper right, UR, lower left, LL, lower right, LR, and none. Great. So now we can go ahead and do something. Now, right now we're just passing in a string, and that's fine enough for our purposes. All right, so we need to track which mode we're in, and at the same time, change the current position of the icon. Okay, well, it's worth pausing a moment to say, what's controlling the position of the icon right now? What does that look like? And so let's back up a second. This is not relevant. Where are we? Create main window. There we go. So let's go ahead and squeeze down some of these bits of code. Okay. So we have a lock control, and we have a set parent. But a control's default location in a parent is 0, 0. That is 0 away from the left and 0 away from the top. So by not doing any sort of set position, we're just inheriting that default upper left. So if I was to do lock control set position, at least I think it's called that. Let me double check in the documentation. Turbine.ui.control. And we're looking for position. Yeah, set position. And that'll take a left and then top. Great. So if I set position to be 2040, it should be a little bit away from the left and twice as much away from the top. So let's come on in here and unload. Oh, well, sure. And reload our plugin. And we can see now, I'm going to bring this out a little bit more, that we've come off of the edge. So excellent. That's how we're going to move this thing around. No, I said 11Zs. Okay, so what we want, perhaps, is a helper function. Now, is this lock control referenced anywhere else? Not yet. Okay. Ideally, this would be in a more class environment where that would be a member of the window object, but it's just a global variable right now. We're being kind of lazy with that. So what we want is we want a helper function to move function. Yeah, function move lock button. And new position. And right now, we're just passing around strings that are UL, LL. That's fine, I guess. So we can make that better later in a brace-oriented language like C++ or C#. My mind would immediately jump to enumerations. I don't actually remember if enumerations are a thing in Lua. Let's check. Lua, does Lua have enumerations? Or enums, as they're commonly abbreviated to. Let's see. There are no enums in Lua. Yeah, that's fair enough. So what they're saying, though, use a variable. That's actually a really good idea. Let's pause for a moment and say, just like with the language stuff here, lock location stuff, and we'll put a corresponding end lock location stuff, just to tell us it's right in here. And then we'll go ahead and say UL equals upper left. It really doesn't matter what it is. We'll just have a single place to point to. Upper right equals upper right. Lower left equals lower left. Lower right equals lower right. But now we have global variables, UL, UR, LL, LR, and we can use those in place of these strings. And if we change it here, it will automatically change everywhere. Awesome. So let's find that UL that we were using before. And instead of the string, we're just going to pass that variable. Now that variable right now does happen to be an identical string. Well, that just gives us a little bit of flexibility later on. Oh, we forgot none. All right. Well, let's go ahead and none equals none. There we go. So we've got our 5 right there. So we can assume that our move lock button, I'm actually going to move that right next to the change icon location. Move lock button is going to take one of those 5 variables. So pass UL, LL, upper left, upper right, lower right, or none. Cool. So what does this look like? Well, if this is, we're just going to check if it's each of these, and I think we'll default. Should we default to none or default to upper left? That's a question. Like, would I rather the lock not appear at all if something's messed up, or in the upper left? And I think the answer is, I would rather it show up in the upper left as a default, as a Hail Mary, everything's gone wrong. Let's do that. So, the default behavior is upper left. So we're not going to check for that. We'll check for the others instead. So if none, then else, if, I'm abbreviating, I should say if new position equals none, else if new position equals upper right, then else if new position equals lower left, then else if. Now, this is a natural place where in a brace language you would have a switch statement that says, given this variable new position, here's what I want to do for none, for UR, for LL, etc., etc. It looks a lot like switch on new position, case none, case none, no, case UR, etc. So it looks like that. It's syntactic sugar, as they would call it. It's just a nicer way to write it than this if-else statement. But by calling it out as a switch statement, you potentially let the compiler do some optimizations that are kind of guaranteed when you're switching like this. An if-else statement like this isn't guaranteed to be checking new position every time. So the compiler would have to do extra work to guarantee you're only checking new position and you're switching based on its values and blah, blah, blah. A switch statement just goes straight on through and says, yeah, we're definitely just checking the values here. Do whatever optimizations you can for that. You know, that's cool. But in this case, we're not worried about optimizations. This is happening when someone clicks a button. It doesn't matter if it takes 1/100 of a second more. It's not detectable by the human eye. Okay, so we have none, UR, LL, and LR, and or else. Else, the default behavior is UL, and then AND. So that's our giant if-else statement. Looks good. Wouldn't hurt to try to load the plugin and make sure I didn't mistype something there. Perfect. Okay, so that's a good start. And then, if it's none, then we have a lock control set visible to. Well, sorry, I'm contemplating design decisions in my head, and that's what makes me make that noise. Let's go ahead and. Well, that's funny. Let's go ahead and use the same variable each place. Okay, so first of all, when we press the button, we'll go ahead and call this new function. But what I'm thinking is that every one of these wants to set visible to true and then do something else. So we might be looking for more like this. If it's none, then set it to false. Otherwise, we're going to set lock control set visible to true and go through the rest of this if-else statement. And I think that we won't have to call set visible all the time. We're just either setting it to false or true. and then doing the positional stuff. So just to double check that that makes some sort of sense, let's come on in here. None, awesome, it's not visible. Click any other button and it is visible. Cool, okay, progress is being made. And sorry, that button is so small. I wonder if I could make, I'd have to set the stretch mode. It's a whole thing. Hopefully you can see it okay. It's in the middle of my screen there, and it's very tiny. Oh, I should get more comfortable with set stretch mode. Okay, so 16 is the size, and that's in lock control. Excellent. So we're gonna go ahead and set size, excellent. So we're gonna go ahead and make bigger for testing. Lock control set size, lock width times 4, lock height times 4. But first, we need to set lock control set stretch something, something, something. So let's go on in. Set stretch, nope, stretch. Oh, what am I thinking of? I'm going to go back to Garen's excellent writing plugins thread because I know Garen covers it. Set stretch mode, awesome. What is this? Okay, it is not on that. Oh, is it on a window? Oh, if it's on a window, that would be exciting. No. What am I missing? Oh, maybe it's there, but it's not documented. That is one of the things. So if I come to the LOTRO wiki version of the reference, it's going to have some stuff documented, or at least present, even though it's not 100% documented. So let's grab set stretch mode. There we go. It is on control. Perfect. And then back to the plugin set stretch mode. 1, I believe, is what we want. So let's go ahead and do that. Unload and reload. No, but now we have the opacity thing that I wanted. That's delightful. Hang on a second. What is that supposed to do? That's exactly what I wanted last time. Okay, so we'll scale an image based on the size it had when the stretch mode was assigned and its current size. When stretch mode is 1, it's important to set the control to the image's original size before assigning stretch mode 1, then set the size to the desired stretch after stretch mode 1. Yes. Now, what's delightful here is last time we were trying to make the lock mostly opaque so that it just kind of faded into the background until your mouse was over it. And it wasn't coming together because of, just windowing systems are sometimes hard. And yet here, it is working. So let me make a note here. Can icon be that setting this line made the opacity work? Cool. Well, I've documented that a little bit. Did I have the opacity somewhere? Oh. Oh, that's so funny. Oh, yes. Right, I had this whole function here, which was controlling opacity. But the real question is, what's going on with the size? Oh, of course. Because I'm setting the background dynamically like that, I suspect, see, this is just snowballing here. So, all right, so if we do a set size here, and set the stretch mode to 0, and then set the background, and then redo the stretch mode, that might give us the bigger lock that I just wanted to play around with that having it bigger. Oh, there we go. It wasn't their beginning. That's so interesting. So update background, we call that. What I don't understand is why it started small. Right, like it is, actually the opacity thing actually is making it harder to see it. Let's pull that opacity out a second. Okay, return 1. Because I want to be able to see that thing. Okay, but why is it small? Do we have a set size? Do we not have a set size? We do, yes. That is so weird. Once again, showing that I'm more of a back-end person. I don't really understand UIs nearly as well as I need to. But we have a large lock icon, so it's much easier to see. That's the whole point. Okay, so with that, we have a lock control that is being created. Excellent. And when we're checking things here, we can see it goes visible, it comes back, it goes hidden, comes back. So that's good. Now what we need is moving to new location. So the default behavior, we know that lock control, we want to set position to 0, 0, upper left. That's totally fine. Everything else is a little bit harder because we need to calculate the size of the lock control and offset it from the current location. So if the new location is upper right, then we know that local top equals 0 and local right equals, and we need the name of the thing. We need, is it window? It's window. Excellent. We need window get width minus lock control get width, because we need the lock controls to start its width away from the right side. And then we can just local top equals 0, local right equals 0. I should say left. Left. And then we can go ahead and left equals this. And we can just go ahead and use these variables all along. So left and top. Go ahead and get back. I wasn't expecting to share this platform with a bear, but why not? All right, we have left, we have top, left top, excellent. We're only setting the left, top is good, 0. If it's lower left, then we need top equals window get height minus lock control get height, but left is 0. So we don't need to change that. The platform is big enough for the two of us. Absolutely, Little Redhead. In fact, this platform is huge, and I really wish... so I was having this conversation where Will says, how much room does a bear really leave for rejection realistically? Absolutely. The earnings are always welcome. So I was having this conversation with Little Redhead. This has nothing to do with plugins, so feel free to tune out for the next 2 minutes. So way back in ye olden days, there was a game that kind of was one of the first-person shooters, Castle Wolfenstein from id Software, right? And it was a very two-dimensional game. You could move left, right, forward, backwards, but there was no elevation, there was no height. And the rooms feel really claustrophobic by modern standards because it was basically the height of your character plus an inch. And so if you go watch footage from that, it's like, oh my goodness, like the walls are crowding in on me, but it's really just the ceiling because it's so low. And then you move on to a game like Doom, which theoretically, you could go up and down. You could go upstairs, you could go up and down a lift, but the map was strictly speaking, this map was strictly speaking two-dimensional. You couldn't have a corridor go underneath another corridor. So you could never have crossing paths like that. What you could have was elevation changes, but if you were just looking at top down, all you would see is left, right, forward, backward. You would never see a reason to consider elevation being important from a map design, because yeah, you could never cross things. So we would call it 2.5 dimensions. Like technically you could go up and down, but realistically that was kind of an illusion, right? Like it was bringing you up and down, but not in a meaningful way. I mean, yeah, you could fall and take damage, I guess. But now you have games like Lord of the Rings Online that are fully three-dimensional. You can have things on top of other things. You can have corridors crossing over other corridors. But despite that, a lot of the game world is still very 2.5 dimensionals. You have topography, but you don't have three-dimensional mazes so much. Like there's a few exceptions, definitely. And one of the areas I really like, possibly for this reason, is the area just outside the Shadowed Refuge of the Foundations of Stone, where it really does feel like you have stuff happening on top of other stuff. And even that is an illusion. Almost all of it is, strictly speaking, there is only one thing happening in that vertical space right there, right? There's just a couple of places where you have things on top of other things. But even that is enough to make it feel all twisty-turny, to give you that sense of, I really don't know how to get from point A to point B. I'm just going to keep going south until I find the road. And so, yeah, there's a lot of topography in Moria especially, but in the world. And there's just... I feel like the scaffolding here is underutilized, and I really wish I could get to that piece of scaffolding up there. I like the elevators in the new Erebor housing, where you just like press a button and whoop, you're just 100 meters up. It's not good from a falling perspective, but it's very, very nice from a let's explore the space perspective. So yeah, despite all of the apparent topology going on here, topography? Topography. I wish there was more usage of things like the scaffolding. I don't know what would go up here, and a lot of people would be like, I have to go up here and jump across this ledge and come over here. But it'd be for something. I don't know, like a little house, maybe a guard shack, not just a couple of player characters who just want to look down on the peasants below. Yeah, I guess that's a good enough reason to be up here. Okay, so that is my aside on the dimensionality of the LOTRO maps. Back to plugins. Oops, that water glass is empty. We'll start a new one. Okay, so lower right is actually the most complicated. And it's starting to help us realize that we could pre-calculate this in each place if we really wanted to. We could pre-calculate the far left and the far down and just make use of it in these branches. But the reality is this isn't too complicated and it's all isolated right here. I could have a local far left, local far top, something like that, and just make use, opt into, are we using the close left or the far left? And that would maybe, we wouldn't be duplicating this logic right here. We wouldn't be writing it twice. Whenever I write something twice, I start thinking, do I really need that 2 times here? And in this case, it's fine. It's fine. I'm overthinking it. But default behavior is that. So top is 0 and left is 0. Okay. Well, that gives us a way to accidentally close too many windows. That gives us a way to move this thing around, maybe. It's not actually doing it, but it could be. Oh, lock control, set position, left top. Yeah, let's add a debug statement so we know what we're doing. Turbine.shell.writeLine sends to the standard window. And we're going to just say setting lock position to, and we'll concatenate in the left and the top values there. Awesome. Oh, maybe I just hadn't reloaded it. That's entirely possible. Okay, so the resizing of the thing is messing us up, and I find that very interesting. It suggests that I didn't do something correctly. All right, so we are setting that size. Let me interrogate that size here. So we're just going to do another turbine.shell.writeLine, and we're going to say lock size is, and I am curious, can I concatenate in a tuple? So we're going to do lock control get size. Let's see what, it's probably going to get object to that. That function is temperamental. Oh, it just cut it off. That's fun. Okay. Get width. And then lock control get height. That's fine. I don't mind spelling that out. So what happened was a tuple came back, but the print function only took the first part of that, the first 16. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so lock size is 1616. That's interesting because when we hover over, when we do that thing, we've blown it up to 64 by 64, but I don't think we're recording it properly. So we have lock control set size. Lock control set size. What I'm not understanding here is why that's not working. So let's get rid of the only set size here that I haven't mucked with so far. Okay, we still have a 1616. Fascinating. Now, part of me says just don't worry about it. Making it bigger was just a fun thing to do while playing around with this thing. And part of me is like, but I want it to work. I want everything I do to work. I want to know what's going on. And so I think I'll give it like 30 more seconds to try to figure out what's going on, and then I'm just going to move on. All right, so we have a set size, and then a set size lock width times 4. Uh-oh. I put that thing way too far. Okay. We're still getting a lock size of 16 by 16. That's fascinating, but ultimately I just don't think it matters very much. So I'm going to bring up my source control utility. Can't believe that I haven't pulled that up yet. And we're going to go ahead and wait a second for it to load up. It's going to appear on one of these windows. There we go. Okay. So it's just checking the current state of the files, which is excellent because that's what we need. Local changes. Ignore all that D-tracker stuff. I'm in the middle of breaking things over there. Okay, so we have to do lock control and opaque quest tracker. So the lock control is really where the big stuff, all of those changes are. So we're going to just discard that, and we're going to discard that, and we're going to discard this. But the one thing I want is that opacity thing. We'll come back to that. But come back in here, we can see the opacity thing is no longer working. That's okay. But upper right, and lower left, that's all doing great. Now, where does this fall down? We're not taking into account the relative position of that lock when we resize the window. So if I make this window bigger or smaller, that lock needs to move along with the window. So we're going to have to code that in next. Okay. We have lock location stuff, we have the localizations, we have the move lock button, we have the change icon lock location. Excellent. That's where we're going to focus next. We should get rid of all that debug statement that I just wrote though. Okay. Coming back in. We're going to go ahead and, so again, I can't speak the benefits of source control enough. If you're not using source control, I recommend it even if the only thing you're doing is easily undoing a bunch of changes that you did just to see what would happen. So we're going to come in here. Look for those right lines. We're going to get rid of those debug statements. Awesome. Change lock icon location. We're going to get rid of that one as well. So we need something. We need to remember where this is supposed to be. So window lock control location equals new location. So we could actually just call move lock button every time the window gets resized. That would be the easy way to do it. We already have a function for positioning the lock. Now, we could do it a little bit more efficiently than that. And that would include some duplication of this logic. But the very basic thing is the window got bigger or smaller, call this function again. Let's go take a look at that function, though, and see if there's not maybe a little bit better way of doing it. All right, so we're done with the options. We're done with main. Let's go find where we're looking for. Create main window. Perfect. So when the mouse is moving, we're doing either a resizing or a moving the window. And it's resizing that we care about. In fact, let me resize this window. Okay, so how much will the width and height change? Where will the window be? Check for each of the borders. Awesome. So we care about some of these things, but not the other. For instance, if I'm looking at this window and I start resizing the right, then I only care about the lock position if the lock is attached to the right, upper right or lower right. If it's attached to the lower left, I don't care about that. Same thing, maybe? Oh, because of the way Windows works, I do care about it in other places. That's fun. Okay, so as we said, the easiest thing would be move lock button window dot lock control location. So we call that function whenever the window is being changed, and it just sticks where it's supposed to, right? That's super easy. And because this is not a common operation and it's not a you're not doing this in a bit of combat, you're not doing this in a high performance situation, this is probably fine, right? Like I am okay with the fact that that's probably slightly less efficient than some code we could write, because that code would be almost all duplicated and it would be very specific. Instead, we can just call the function that says do the thing. Oh, we have a grim. A grim? Shadow. There we go. So we have, yeah, I think this is a fine compromise where we wrote one line of code and that lock icon is sticking where it needs to stick. Awesome. And if we have none, then we have none, right? It continues to be off. If we have upper left, then really that function call is just not going to be doing anything. We're going to set the position to 0. It's already 0. That's fine. And then upper right. Awesome. Yeah, I have no reason to believe this isn't working, and it's really nice to see that it is working. And then we can still lock the window in place. Awesome. So let's look at that in situ, as it were. Let me go ahead and move that back underneath. I'm going to move that chat window out of the way. Back underneath here. And then we just have that question of, where would I want to see that? Upper right? Upper right is not bad, right? Like it's just underneath the radar. It's kind of out of the way. I'm probably not going to click it, and it doesn't visually look like a problem to me. But that's the beauty of this, is that the user gets to figure out where they want it or if they don't want it. As far as defaults go, upper right just worries me because of that radar collision. That radar bounding box is so big. I just can't bring myself to make upper right the default. Oh, hey, I got a deed started. Whoops. Do I have a Fire Grim? Let's see, I do have a Fire Grim. Sweet. And I have a Grim. All right. Deed completed. Boy, I wish I'd thought about loading my deed tracker for that. I'll have to save that off for later. Keeper of Grim Company. Sure, why not? No need. Neat. So we made a function that says put the lock where it's supposed to be. We call it when we push the button, but also whenever we resize the window, just in case the position of the lock has changed because the positions of the thing it was attached to changed. So remember, when the Opaque Quest Tracker window resizes, move the lock control to stay in the corner. Done. Have an option to determine which corner the lock icon appears in. Done. Default to lower right. Oh, that's a good question. I don't think we're persisting this. That's a good to-do item. Persist lock location in save file. Okay. Also, we should have a README, so we can track this kind of thing. Opaque lock icon available for quick lock unlock. You can change the lock's position in the options window. Excellent. So we have lock control location. When we set this, this would be a great thing to save in our settings. So let's take a look at our settings. We have, not the language. All right, we have default settings. So we have a default of locked and lock icon position equals, and the real question is, do we have? We do. So upper left. Upper left is also a problem though, I guess. I guess the real thing is it sticks out further. Okay. I'm going to start with upper left. I'm going to probably be convinced that's a bad idea. But upper left. We'll start with that. And again, we're using that variable. So I get very worried about what I put into a save file and how fragile that is. And so my concern is I'm using an internal value. And I think I'll just have to deal with that. I don't think these are ever changing, but just in case. I wanted to think through that process. All right, so we're going to save the string UL for our lock icon position in the default settings. Okay, and then our actual settings, we have setting.opaquewin.lock icon position. Okay, so that will look like settings.opaquewin.lock icon position equals something. So let's go look at this. When we're changing that, we're going to go ahead and set settings equal new location. Now, one wonders, do we actually need window.lock control location at that point? Or is that only being used there? I think there's not much reason to be duplicating it like that. So we're going to go ahead and just use the settings. So settings, opaquewin.lock icon position, and we have no more lock control location. Don't need it, throw it out, it was a bad idea. But it got us to where we wanted to be. Okay, so in that case, we can see my icon defaulted to upper left, because that is the default, I didn't have it saved. Now I'm going to set it to lower right, unload, reload. I didn't actually load it when we first started, did I? I did not. I should have, but I didn't. Okay, so what we want to do is basically call change lock icon location with that setting right after we make the thing. And that's going to be up in the main window creation function. We do that, and right here, we're going to go ahead and change lock icon location. We already know we have the settings loaded. And so, great. We see it happening in lower right, move to lower left, unload, load, great. None, unload, load, perfect. I'm going to put it to upper right, though. I like that. I like that for me because I know that that window is not underneath my radar. That bounding box got a little bit easier to work with when I switched to full screen because I got another 80 pixels or so. And that's a lot of pixels for that radar to not be in the way with. Okay, so excellent. Well, is that it? That's a great question. Persist lock location save file done. Default to lower right. I think because we have a way to change it so easily, I'm really tempted for upper left. Good afternoon, Eldoleth. You're settling in with lunch. You've caught me stymied on a particular issue of, we have a little lock icon where you can click it to move the window around and then click it to lock it. And this is just a shortcut for the options window. And we've made it responsive to the F12 key so that it no longer gets in the way of screenshots. Awesome. But the question that I'm now beating myself up over is, what's the good default location? Upper left, lower right, upper right, or just not visible at all? Maybe people have to go and find this thing. And right now I'm leaning towards upper left, so it's out from underneath that radar. But that means everyone who uses this thing is going to have a little lock icon kind of in the middle of their screen, which isn't my favorite thing. Oh, Eldoleth says that's what you were going to ask about, was the F12. Absolutely, and I don't know how I missed it on the first time. Like, that's kind of one of the fundamental things is react to the F12 key. I should really have a checklist of things my plugin needs to do before I release it. F12 would definitely be on there. So I'm leaning towards upper left. It's super easy to change, but yeah, that's I'm just grinding my gears over that, and it's such an inconsequential thing, right? But the problem is, once it's released, when someone loads up this plugin, now it's contaminated their save file, as it were. It's in there, and there's no real changing it without adding code. You can't just change the default value. You have to also add code that says, well, if it was upper right, we're going to just pretend like that doesn't, but what if they wanted it there? It's a whole thing. Okay, defaulting lower right, nope. Upper left. All right, buttons out to the option screen, done. Track which mode we're in, done. Change the position of the icon, yes. On future resizes, take into account the current position of the icon. We're absolutely doing that. Or, after each resize, call a function to fix the lock icon if necessary. That's what we ended up doing. It was a one-line change. It was super easy. All right. That's awesome. We're going to pause for a minute, go back to source control, and we're going to take a snapshot of the stuff we've done so far. So, lock icon available for quick lock/unlock. Excellent. We're going to add that for the README. To do. We're going to go ahead and save those to do changes. Eldolith says, that fix makes me unbelievably happy. I'm super glad. Again, that was a total oops moment when I was like, what do you mean it doesn't react to F12? Noob. But I'm glad we're going to get that release in, hopefully today. We're making really good progress. All right, so what are the changes that we're looking at? We have some global variables that we can pass around as shorthand for these things. Awesome. Now, it's a little silly in this case to have them just be defined as the string of themselves, but it makes it really easy to save it to a file, to look in the file and see what's going on, and it gives us that open-endedness that if we have to change it later, we can. Cool, stage it. All right, we have localizations for each of those buttons and the label. Great. We have a default lock position of upper left. Sounds great. We have the initial positioning of the lock icon when we're creating the window. Love it. We have, after dragging to resize the window, we go ahead and update the lock position. Need that. And then we have the actual helper function itself, moving it and handling the change of it, which both moves it and saves off in the settings. Now, we could probably consolidate those into a single function, but in my head, the act of moving the lock icon is kind of different from the act of, hey, it has been moved via the options button. And that right now is just one line, but I could see that becoming more than one line really fast. Cool. And then what else? We went ahead and made the options bigger. Is that too big? That looks a little too big right now. Let's go ahead. That's line 514. Let's come on in to line 514. And let's back that off to 300 and see if that's still tall enough. I'm betting that's not quite good. That's actually not too bad. Let's bump it up to 325. There we go. Now, my only concern about that does make this show up in default. And if I just said 300, at least on mine, the default size of that plugin manager, no scroll bar, which I feel like is a better initial experience. Now, you can make it show up if you manually change the size of this window. But okay, we'll call it 300. That'll be good. Okay, that's all excellent. And then finally, we have the controls in the options section. There's a lot of white space there. I'm going to go in and fix that. 631. No need for all that. What was that? I don't even know. Okay. Great. We're going to stage that. Perfect. Let's go ahead and take that snapshot. We're going to commit those changes. We can see we have one unpushed change here. And if we go back to our tree here, we can see exactly what changes we made and where. And it's very easy to undo those if we needed to. But of course we don't. We always only write perfect code. Probably. Okay, so we wanted that icon to actually be opaque until it came time to, when the mouse cursor hovered over it. And we were struggling with that last time, and then accidentally this time, we saw that throwing a set stretch mode in there seems to make it work. Now, I don't know if it's going to keep working now that we're not trying to change the size. So let's come into lock control, and let's go ahead and set size, and set stretch mode 1. And we're going to go ahead and unload, reload, and then, oh my goodness, it's right there. The lock icon is there. Now, that might actually be a little too opaque. I guess people who are more likely to be using this than I am can kind of weigh in on this. But that's what I was hoping. It was something that really didn't stand out until your mouse was over it. And then, bam, fully opaque, but then mostly transparent. Now, we could modify that. And if we really wanted to, we could have like a sliding bar in here to adjust, just like with the opacity. But that feels like overkill for this. So, like, do I have an option that controls it? Do I go with 50% opacity? Maybe that's enough. It almost feels like you could actually have something that's completely not there until you mouse over it, and then it is there. Like you can do that, but that feels less user friendly. Like here's 25%, it still is pretty dark. And then if I move that over to the upper left, yeah, that's neat. Okay, I think we'll go ahead and start with a 25% opacity until your mouse is over it, then it jumps to 100% opacity. We'll leave that for now. And I guess we'll see if there's any feedback on, I can't find the lock control. So, we'll go ahead and, no, that's the wrong window. Windows. Come on into the to-do. Can block icon be made at 20% until mouse over? Yes, yes it can. Okay. Make the resize border custom. Just looking at some old potential features. None of those seem particularly in need of servicing right now. So, to-do files updated. That's a completely different plugin. We could go ahead and in the README notes, icon is 25% opaque until The mouse cursor is over the button. It is lock icon. Okay. The lock icon is over. Okay. Writing things is hard, man. Okay. So it's available, it's 25% opaque until you're over it, and you can change the position. Perfect. And we now respond to the F12 key, of course. Don't know why that took three updates to fix, but here we are. Okay, and that's a great commit message. We fixed the opacity. Done. Let's go ahead and push those out just to make us lightning proof. Excellent. They're out in the cloud now. So that is kind of where we're at right now. We have a button that is a fast lock unlock. That was requested for people who want the opaque area to cover the quests, but then they get more quests and they need to make it bigger. Actually, that would be kind of a reason for it to be on the lower left, because that's where I would drag from to make this bigger and smaller. But user gets to choose where it is. And so, maybe lower right. And so that was a fast way to do it instead of having to go into the options menu and the F12 key, and we're good to go. Okay. I'm going to do a little cheer here because Hobbit cheers are great. And now we're going to go ahead and look at doing a release. So, first question. Outlaw says, yeah, I'm constantly adjusting mine when I pop in instances and all the quests go away, etc. I wonder, do you change the size for whatever auto-episode quests are there? Would it be nice to have a little toggle that says, just make it go away for now? Like, this lock is meant to just be for locking and unlocking, but one could also, I don't know, if you double click it or something, then the opacity just goes away until you double click it again? I don't know. Like, is that at all useful? Just turn the opacity off for now? It seems contrary to the nature of the beasts, but again, you don't want to have to like go in and change the actual opacity of the plugin if you just want it to temporarily go away, but not in F12 mode. Anyway, think on that. Let me know in the chat there what would be useful, because I love knowing people use this, and I sadly don't use it very often. Fortunately, my eyesight is good enough that I haven't bothered with it, and I probably should. Just well, the redhead says, could you have a setting 1 and setting 2? I mean, yeah, you can do anything, but nothing happens without effort. Yeah, I mean, it'd be totally possible to have some presets, like a little 1, a little 2, a little 3, and you click them to cycle through presets and have like red and green and blue. I don't know. Like, you could do that. It would just make the options more complicated. Elderless says, well, you usually have at least one instance-based question there, so going away completely wouldn't be necessary. Okay, so it sounds like, for this purpose, it has the little lock icon that you click, and then just collapse it on down, and then click it back. And there's a minimum size, so you don't just make it like collapse to nothing. It sounds like that will be a nice compromise where you can just click it, resize, click it, and you're good to go. Neat. Exo points out, and this was a thought I had as well, Exo says you can tell if someone entered an instance, and this is absolutely true. The D tracker does this, and it's, let's see. Do I remember how it does it? There's a whole where are you subsystem, because unfortunately there's no good way to interrogate LOTRO to say where am I, but you can pay attention to chat window changes. So you can look at chat notifications and say, aha, we're in an instance. So that is actually a point. We could have an option in a future version, probably not today, that says, if you enter an instance, make the window as small as possible, or make it whatever secondary size, and that could be a whole thing. Absolutely correct, EXO, and absolutely beyond the scope of today's stream. Okay, so in our website, we have some release notices. And so LOTRO interface description, this is the 1.02 version. We're gonna go ahead and clone that off to 1.03. And this just lets us prepare our markdown that we're gonna go ahead and paste into the LOTRO interface page. And that gives us a historical record, just in case LOTRO interface dies or something, or gets corrupted or whatever. Or we just wanna look back 7 versions ago and say, what did it look like back in the olden days? The olden days of 2022. Okay, so in the option screens, you can, well, that's a good question. Let's pull that up so we can compare against it. Change the background color using the picker. Lock the window, save the window. I don't actually have change the opacity. We should do that. Change the background opacity. Change the background color, lock the window once it's in the correct location / size. Change the location of the lock unlock button on the window. Save the current settings and revert the current settings. Great. So we've updated that. Installation and startup, don't need to worry about that. All right, known issues. None, it's perfect. No, I should say, in the README, I noticed that. All right. A note. The lock icon is 25% opaque until the mouse cursor is over it. That just sounds clunky. Oh well. Oh, you know, it's so funny. I don't actually have a, where is it currently? Show where, which location is currently selected. Okay, this is actually not too bad at all, and is a bit of a cheat. So, and I like cheating, so we're gonna go ahead and do that real fast. Okay, so in the setting, location, change lock icon location, great. You know what? I don't actually want to change it. I want to move the lock button. So we want to select that and go find this use. Yeah, okay. But in the change lock icon, in here, we want to go ahead and update the appropriate button here to show. Now, the real question is, do we have access to those buttons? And the answer is no, but we can. So let's go ahead and come on in here and say, and again, we're using global variables here. I wouldn't do this in a larger project, but here it'll be fine until it's not, and then we can fix it later. So we're gonna have location buttons equals a table. I hear you, Bjorning, I hear you. We're going to go ahead and we're in the options window where we set the, where we create these buttons. We're going to go ahead and say location buttons UL equals upper left button. And we're going to do that same thing for each of these. So upper right UR. We're going to go ahead and do lower left, and that's our LL. We're going to do our lower right. And if I were a cleverer person, I would have just done a for loop, iterating 5 times with some clever maths for positioning the buttons, instead of doing 5 different things that all do the same thing. But this was a little bit easier to reason through, and we can always do that refactoring later and say, okay, here's the commonality, here's what's different, here's how to just do a loop and produce all 5 of these in one go. Again, a project for another day, but it's one of those things that I'm thinking about as I'm looking at this. We've got 5 blocks of almost identical code. That didn't need to be that way. And hopefully a future me looking at this would be like, why did they do that? They could have done this much better way. And that future me is absolutely correct. Okay, so we have our location buttons. And that means when we change lock icon location, we can go ahead and enable all buttons, disable the clicked button. So again, this could be a loop, but we know upper left dot, oh, what is the way to enable and disable a button? Is enabled, set enabled. Excellent, that's what we need. So set enabled true. We're going to iterate through all of them. Upper left, upper right, lower left, lower right, and none. But then we're going to go ahead and whichever one was just clicked, we're going to go ahead and enable that one, or disable that. Set enabled to false. And what does that do? Well, specifically it does 2 things. I wonder if people are having a combat. You know what? I changed this. I'm going to change it back because I need this behavior at the beginning as well. Okay, so ideally we're going to get an error message. Neat. Location buttons. Yeah. Attempt to index. Oh. Yeah, I can see that being a problem. Okay, so new plan, don't call this function until the relative buttons have been created. No, we've already created them, haven't we? Oh, create main window. What's going on here? Create, draw options control. Well, there's your problem. Let's go ahead and try to do that first. Now, that could cause its own problem. Yeah, these are mutually referential. That's great. This comes back to the problem that I was referencing earlier, was things are really kind of tightly bound together here. So, the other way of solving this is just when we create the buttons, they are enabled or not. So, we have in our settings, we have a settings.opaque.lock icon position. And here, where we are working with our upper left, upper right, etc., we can do upper left button set enabled to be that position equals upper left. Does not equal. And we're going to continue to do that. And again, this is the same thing repeated over and over. This should be in a loop. It's just not there yet. Lower left. Lower right. And none. Let's give that a try. Okay, so if I click the upper left, what we're seeing is the button is disabled. showing me that A, I can't click it again, no point, and that's the one that's done. So if I click none, that's disabled. If I click upper right, and so what we get is a visual representation of the one that is chosen. Great, that should help you find the button even though it is mostly opaque. If you clicked none, oh, that explains why it's not there. Now, the one thing we just saw when we loaded this is that the buttons were not set up properly. So in my haste, that didn't work. Okay, so let's look and see. We have set enabled that lock icon position does not equal upper left. Well, what does it equal? So turbine dot shell dot right line. This value is, we'll just concatenate that in. Outlook has updated the plugins to add an Opaque Quest Tracker and Travel Window to Travel Window 2. Oh, that's very kind of you to add the Opaque Quest Tracker, if you did, and you did it after Little Red had put it into chat. Excellent. And yes, Travel Window 2 is being actively maintained, which is excellent. All right, so we have a little debug statement. We can see settings that is UL. Okay, so upper left should be getting set. So we're setting enabled. This does not equal UL, but it does. Okay, well, maybe I'm doing something wrong here. So let's go ahead and just spit it out to the console. Right line. This equals, and then it should be a Boolean, so we do need to call it toString on it. Otherwise, it will not be happy with that. Let's go ahead and load that back up. That is false. It is not equal to. Great. So set enabled should be false. Am I going insane? And I'm also going to call out when we're coming into this change lock icon location function, just in case that's being called at a time that I'm not expecting it. Let's go ahead and do that. No, everything is good. What's going on here? Well, that's confusing. Okay, upper left button set enabled to the icon position not equal to this thing. Well, that is just strange. I didn't change the thing I was setting, just the variable I was comparing against. Again, this is a problem that would be solved if this was in a loop, which is why it should be in a loop. There we go. Okay, upper left button is correctly being set. Boom. Oh, yes, Little Red had put the updated text. Awesome. I figured there was a character limit on those things, so I didn't want to add this and add this and add that. But yes, Opaque Quest Tracker, which is a bit of a misnomer. It's just a box. You can put it anywhere. It's just the quest area seems to be the most useful area for that box. But if the screen was really bright, you could just put an opaque window across the entire screen, I guess. You do you. Okay, so we have no more need for those debug outputs. Did I get rid of them all? Yes, I did. Okay, so we now have some code that disables the button that is the current state. And that gives us a visual feedback for which one is set. So if I set it to none, and then I unload, reload, come back into options, we can see none is the one that stands out. That's the one that's been set. And you get that visual feedback as if you've pressed in a button. Now, we're just latching on to the fact that disabled buttons look different. Unfortunately, there's not really any other sense of the button is depressed other than when you are clicking it right there. And so you'd have to make your own button to to make that happen. But in this case, I don't want you to be able to click the button again, so disabling it is great. A double click means nothing in this case. It would just be confusing. So yes, this is great. Okay, awesome. And we've got that opacity thing going on. So good, so good. All right, let's go back to our source control and take a look at the changes we've done. Oh, we were in the middle of editing our website description. Of course we were. Okay, so show which location is currently selected. Let's mark that as done. And so don't need that. And it's not really even a thing to put into the README. It's just a nice to have on the visual. Note, the lock icon is 25% opaque. You can see which position it is currently in. You can see where it is located by looking at the options window. Sure. If you can't find it, it's on you. I'll wash my hands of it. Okay, we have installation instructions. Nothing has really changed. We have a revision history. Excellent. Here's where we can go ahead and revise our history. Wait, no. All right, hey, we're in February. We're already 1/12 of the way through the year. That is so scary. What happened? All right, so we can go to our README file and do an abridged version of this. Plugin now responds to F12 key to hide the HUD. And lock icon available for quick lock unlock. Great. So that's our marked down document for LOTROinterface.com. We're all good there. What we haven't done is actually change the plugin file, the Opaque Quest Tracker 1.0.3. And I have to wonder, is this thing available on the plugin compendium? I don't remember if I asked for that. I mean, it seems like something I would do. Okay, let's look at the LOTRO plugin compendium. Highly recommended. Opaque Quest Tracker. Hey, it seems to be there. Awesome. Okay. I suppose that raises the question of, do I need a Quest Tracker? Sorry, a LOTRO plugin compendium file. It's being auto-generated because everything is so simple. I don't have any dependencies. I'm just going to leave it. No one seems to be complaining. Awesome. We're going to go ahead and call that good. And let's go ahead and commit our 103 file changes. So version 1.0.3 file changes. That's the description. And oh my goodness, I forgot to actually commit tracking the buttons. Okay, track which location the lock icon is in. Great. Let's look at that. We have the location buttons. We have fixed that function call. We go ahead and set whichever one needs to be set. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Excellent in the sense that I wish I hadn't written it that way, but it works. All right, track which location, and now we have the version 1.0.3 changes files. And that's the .plugin file itself, changing the version, and the version description. Great. And if we go ahead and refresh here, we can see that we do have 1.0.3. Awesome. Okay. Oh, I've still got a Grim. Let's brand a goose instead. Wish a good little decorated goose, yes you are. Excellent. Okay, so we have everything we need to make a release. So I have documents, plugin long releases. I have an Opaque Quest Tracker 1.0.2. So my Proman's release system is go ahead and duplicate the previous one And then this is a sort of a sanity check of what changes are coming in. So we're going to go ahead and make room for the goose. And then in Documents, Lord of the Rings Online, we're going to go ahead and come into Plugins, Cube Plugins, and here we are. Actually, we're going to back one step up. Now, I have my favorite file comparison utility is Beyond Compare. It has a shell extension. I can select left side, select right side, and boom, wrong window. Okay, so wrong display. So here we are, we can see the differences. So we have the 1.0.3, perfect. And then in Opaque Quest Tracker, we can see what's changed here. Little Redhead says, I looked away, why is your goose giant? He's a normal sized goose, he just feels big. Actually, I don't know if you've noticed, but geese are about the size of hobbits. Like, that is a normal-sized goose and a tiny hobbit. So when I just go into first-person mode, I'm at eye height almost with the goose. And now there's a bear on my goose. There we go. Okay. So what we were doing was we were just doing a check against things. So we have a new file lock control. Awesome. Let's bring it over. Opaque Quest Tracker itself has changed a bunch. If we wanted to, we could go review each of these. But I've been pretty happy with each of the steps. We have that toggle HUD, which is oftentimes bound to F12, but we're not binding it or looking for F12. We're looking for this specific action, which means that no matter what the player has bound to, we're good to go. All right, we'll go ahead and take everything, all of those changes there, and our README has also changed. That's to be expected. Okay, so everything in here, the website doesn't go, the resources were good, everything is ready to go. All of our files are set in our staging area. So we have, hello Larger, we have the Cube plugins, and now we're ready to put that into a zip file. I believe you can also do some other type of compression, but I'm just very used to zip files. Okay, so we have the name is going to include the version. Oh, that's under my face. Sorry about that. So we have Opaque Quest Tracker version 103, and then you have to make sure you drag not the staging thing, our Opaque Quest Tracker version 103 folder, the thing that is going to go into your plugins directory. In this case, Cube plugins is going to go straight into that zip file. And we can also compare. The previous one, we see Cube plugins, great. This one, we also see Cube plugins. Perfect. We're good to go. We have a zip file. We have a file to upload. So we're going to go ahead and pull up the LOTRO interface website. All right. We'll just move my goose over a little bit. We have a little bit more room. Perfect. So, when you're looking at the LOTRO interface website, if you yourself have done plugins on here, whoops, I took it a little bit too far. If you yourself have done plugins on a LOTRO interface, then you're going to see on the homepage a List My Interfaces button. There's a really convenient way to find them. We can go to the Opaque Quest Tracker, and on this page, if you are the person who submitted it, then there's going to be an Edit button. Oh look, Mugnug. Have it disappear when hiding LOTRO UI. Yes. Have an option to lock the position without size. This is actually something we delved into, I think, 2 weeks ago. Basically, in order to monitor for any mouse, you have to monitor for all mouse, which means you can't stop listening to mice and be able to do camera moves by clicking on this area. And I don't know how big of a feature that is for other people. For me, that's kind of a non-starter. So we went with the lock icon instead. All right. And another Adria had said that. Awesome. So we're good to go. Let's go ahead and do an edit. Now, the file version, we know we're just doing a minor version bump, so that's a 1.03 for me. We're going to choose that file, and that's Opaque Quest Tracker version 1.03. Awesome. And then, finally, we have already pre-crafted the 103 text. So I'm just going to copy and paste that in here. Now, unfortunately, there's not a preview, but you can always just go back and edit the textual description without changing the file. No problem. And there's no authorization process where you have to wait for it to be approved if you're not changing the file. Okay, we've got images. We should update the options. All right, so we're going to go to the plugin manager. We're going to come on into the options, and we're going to go ahead and let's default to upper left here. And we're going to do a rectangular snip. And of course, during the snip, you're not going to see the snipping process, I don't think, based on how it kind of locks everything there. But we get this. Now, I'm just going to pull up my handy-dandy MS Paint to do a little bit of cropping. I just can't get used to some of the more modern tools. It doesn't feel very precise. And that's probably more of a me problem than a tool problem, but yeah, it is what it is. Great. So that gives us a cropped options there. Now, real question, did I have the whole thing? No, I cropped the list of plugins. That makes sense. Kind of. I mean, it takes away from it all, I suppose. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and save that. We're going to go into Documents, Lord of the Rings Online, Plugins, Q plugins, it's me, Opaque Quest Tracker, and Website. That's just where I chuck these things. And we're going to go ahead and call that Options 1.03. Great. And real question, it might be time. Like, you can barely see that lock icon. I like all the high contrast behind that text. I'm going to leave it even though it doesn't have a lock. That's fine. Ooh, I could add one with a lock, though. I could put a goose behind it. I mean, that would make everything better. Yes. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do another rectangular snip. Again, apologies that you can't see the process, but that's what it'll look like. I mean, that's just beautiful. I don't know why I didn't think of this like for all of my screenshots. Time to rebrand Goose plugins. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and save that. And this is gonna be our third picture. You get to upload 3 or 4 pictures on LOTRO interface, and you can link more if you have them hosted somewhere else. That's totally fine. Okay. In use, this is a 1.0.3 opaque. This is the lock icon. Great. So we've got that saved. And I'm pretty sure the terms and conditions of LOTRO interface don't say no large geese, so we're good. Cool. So we're going to come into the Manage Images. And here we have another thing that I like to keep track of are the words that I use for these images. Again, it's one of those things where I can keep track of them really easily, and when they're gone, they're gone. So if we come into Lord of the Rings Online, plugins, Q plugins, and again, Opaque Quest Tracker, I've just got that started off on the website. I've got image captions. So we're going to open up the 01, save that off to be 03, again, a little bit of a historical record. And then, what are the 3 we're going to use? We have the in use, awesome. We are going to update the options screen, great. Opacity, color, lock status of the window. What else are we seeing in here? Whoa. Showed up on the other display and much bigger. Opacity, color, lock status. What the? Oh no, the snipping window itself polluted a little bit. I'm gonna have to re-snip that real fast. All right, so I don't have a snipper active. Oh, Rocky says you don't see the difference when you crop so tight. The difference in what? Oh, yes. In this case, absolutely correct. What I was going for was the lock icon itself. And the lock icon, when you're not hovering over it, is opaque. And I guess it could be hovering over it during the screenshot. But the goal was to show the lock icon. And what I like about this one is the high contrast. And I'm in Moria. There's not a lot of high contrast here. And so I liked this. And so the lock icon is just off, right? And so this has the wider shot and shows the difference. Absolutely correct. I think that's a very important thing to show in the screenshots. So yes, I would not want to go without that. But here, A, goose, and B, I'm just really highlighting the. In fact, you're right. I should probably highlight that even more. Well, that's hilarious. Apparently, you can just drag images onto streaming software and just plant them on the stream. Well, that sounds great. Let's do that. Whoop. Yes. That's probably silly. I'm going to stop doing that. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and use just a simple rectangle in red to highlight this. But you're right, by cropping it so tightly, you know, Rocky, I think you're right. I think you are absolutely 100% right on that. We're going to go ahead and delete this plugins window. Exo says, that's actually much better. Please replace the plain background with a giant goose head. You know, I leave it up to you to create a custom background that you can then stretch arbitrarily. All right, we're going to go ahead and do a snip. And that is still in mode rectangle. And we're going to go ahead and get a bigger snip here. Awesome. And then we're going to come into MS Paint and just highlight that. I'm not in a rectangle mode. Just highlight this rectangle, or this lock icon. There we go. I like that much better. Excellent suggestion, Rocky. Thank you so much. And apparently I'm saying lock icon fast. Apologies if that's causing confusions in the audience. Okay, cool. We've got that. Awesome. Let's go ahead and minimize that. And then, yeah, the snipping tool has on-screen stuff, and if you're too fast, you can accidentally take a snip of the snipping window itself. So I'm going to come back in here and re-snip the options here. Okay, let's paint. Yeah, no, that's too big. All right, we're going to go ahead and, oops, file save. And we're going to redo the 103 options. Perfect. And that will let us, no, don't worry about saving that. Well, let's go back here. And then what were we doing? We were looking at this so that we could document it. Okay, so the opacity, color, and lock status of the window can be adjusted. The location of the lock icon can be changed. The current settings can be used default setting. Okay, cool. So we just added that as the description. I'm worried that we're going to run out of characters here, but I'm not sure how many we can have there. And then finally, we've got the lock icon. Okay. The default of the lock icon is semi-transparent until you hover over it. Cool. So those will be the descriptions that I'm going to use in the image editor. So when you manage images, you're going to get a window popping up, Oh, it already did. Cool. And then I don't think there's a way to change an existing image. You can only change the text. So the options that are currently here, we're going to go ahead and remove that. And then choose a file. We'll just go ahead and come on in here and grab this one. And again, the text that we're going to use is here. No need to type that all in. All right, did it take all that text? No. So, how many characters did it take? It took 100 characters. All right, that's good to know. Opacity, color, lock status, lock, icon location, and more can be found in options. Okay, we'll just go with the bare bones description. I appreciate database constraints and whatnot, but I want more characters. Oh well. So we're going to change that. And then we're going to choose a file. We're going to get that lock icon. Excellent. Lock icon is semi-transparent until you hover over it. And we're good. Excellent. So we can close this window. And when in doubt, we can pop manage icons back open and see we have all three of them. Sweet. At that point, we're good to go. We've updated the version. We've changed, we've uploaded, we have said replace with the version 3 file. We're updating the text, and we have modified the images. That means we're ready to go. So, it does warn you, if you're uploading a new file, do not stop your browser midway through the upload. That's going to be bad. That being said, it's a tiny file, and I have pretty good internet speed here. So, thank you. Your submission will be deleted if it's incomplete, if it's missing a zip file, if it's missing images, if it's uploaded to the wrong category, files are not modified, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, read those. They're good to know. But in our case, we're good to go. So we can come back to the home page and list my interfaces, and we can see the Opaque Quest Tracker update is pending. But once it is done, opaque. Let's go to the page. Once it is done, then the actual 103 update will be there. The goose image is already there. Excellent. Rock. Yeah, say what you will about the goose. I think the goose head would make reading quest text a little bit harder. If I unload that, yeah, that's some high contrast background right there. I mean, it's delightful high contrast background, but okay. So that is going to be available. It will, once it's fully processed by LOTRO interface, it's going to be available through the LOTRO plugin compendium as well. So if I do a refresh here, we can see it claims 103 is available, but LOTRO plugin compendium does warn against downloading things that are in the middle of that update process. It doesn't go well, so do hold off if you're watching live at home until this version is awaiting approval, until that message goes away. It's still there. Sometimes it takes a few minutes. Sometimes it can take much longer. Usually less than an hour is my experience. But I suppose that depends on what time of day and if there's an actual human that needs to press OK and if they're asleep. Okay, awesome. So that was some basic changes to the Opaque Quest Tracker. The first one, the really easy one, is responding to the F12 key. This is a super important one for your plugins. Can't believe I missed it in the first place. And the actual solution is actually pretty straightforward. In fact, we can review it while that update is coming through. There is an action. It is action 100000B3. You'll sometimes see this spelled out in decimal. I don't think that actually helps any. But if I come open up my calculator and go to programmer mode, then I can paste in, or sorry, I can click the hex first, set me in hex mode, paste in that value, and so you'll sometimes see that defined as 268435635. That doesn't seem any better. And internally, the hex is a lot closer to what that value is. And so we have an action that corresponds to your key mapping. If we come on in here to the key mapping and search for HUD, then that toggle HUD on off. Whatever you have bound that to, apparently I've got that bound to Control G. Why? Strange. So whatever you've bound that to internally for your plugin, it's going to come across as action 100000B3. And with that, we can go ahead and say, if the window sees, so first you have to say you want key events, and then in your key down, if the action is that action, then you can do whatever it is you're going to do. In our case, we just toggle visible or not visible. Some of the more complicated ones are not always visible. Oh, Mr. Xing Xing has said something in chat. Excellent. Are there any add-ons you think everyone must have? So far I have buff bars and that is it. I guess D-Tracker could be nice since I'm a completionist. Eldolith has kindly put in a plugins command there. I would say that what plugins I think are essential definitely depend on which character I'm playing. Let's see, Minstrel Buffs, if you see it in there, is one that I use all the time as a minstrel. And specifically, I use it with a patch that I made. Let me just type that in, Minstrel Buff. So if you play a minstrel, and you may not, but if you do, I highly recommend Minstrel Buff, and then the Minstrel Buffs with Out of Combat timer, which apparently I just released a patch that wasn't 100%, but it will give you a sense of when your ballads will expire with that expires after 9 seconds of being out of combat feature, and all of its variations. So that's a big must for me as a minstrel. I find it super helpful, especially if I'm doing lower level stuff, like if I'm level 100 and I'm running around Dunland because I'm looking for a bunch of leathers or something, then for me, keeping those ballads on means timing when I get into combat so that I refresh them even though I'm only in combat for like half a second. And that's where that has been super useful. It's a little less important if you're doing on-level stuff and you're able to stay in combat for 5 or 10 seconds at a time. Then it's a little less relevant, but it still really helped me understand the internals of how do minstrels do. I don't know. How do I look at my favorites? Let's see. List my interface. My favorites. Cool. All right. Class rate points checklist is just this really nice little window that's like, hey, you're level 57. You have access to these class trait plugins, or sorry, class trait points. Click the ones that you've gotten, and you can kind of keep track of which ones you don't have yet and how do you get them. So if you're not max level, if you don't have all those already, we can just go ahead and do class trait point checklist. We'll go ahead and add them in. I'm using the LOTRO plugin compendium. It's already done. If I come on in here, refresh, class rate point checklist. So it knows I'm level 60, and it knows I'm a minstrel. Plugins have access to that information. And then it just gives you that icon to show and hide the window. And it does not know if I've done the class deeds or melodies of the Valar, et cetera, et cetera. I'm, of course, on Treebeard, so I can't do the epic battle promotion points yet, but I can do all the rest of these on this server. So I should actually have access to 43, and I've got 42. I haven't completed the epic yet on Treebeard through Moria, so that's what I'm missing. What else? That's the wrong window. Titan bar I find incredibly useful for heads-up information from little things like how much inventory space do I have left. I just look, oh, 23, I'm good to go. To bigger things like how much money do I have across all of my characters. I've got 23 gold, but this other one has 43. They're hugging all my gold. Auras is one Exo's been playing around with, but apparently doesn't work for minstrels. So I don't get a chance to play around with it very much, but it looks so pretty. I'm actually going to come on in here and look at the pictures. So here's one for captains, and when I have played around with it, I was playing around with Brawler, just going through the intro and that sort of stuff. Exo says that it never will. That's fair. I mean, minstrels are already good enough. Like, this would just put them over the top. Exo says, I mean, that particular version of R is never. I know. I'm always on the verge of doing like complete rewrites. I totally get it. So, yes, I will. I know you have a previous comment. I haven't. I keep getting distracted by listing off plugins that I like. So I was playing around with this when I was running a brawler through just the introductory intro. It was a Hobbit, so oh, I am dear, and I thought it looked really cool and gave me a little bit better sense of a heads-up display than just the basic view. And then I went back to playing a minstrel, and oh well. Oh, yes. Rocky says, in the German client, you have to fix some translations. Yes, it's on my to-do list to figure out what's up with the German translations. And I'm glad you've gotten it to work. When in doubt, you could go back to the previous version. I think it works there. Exo says, should really put the GIFs of it working on that page. Yeah, I don't know if it supports GIFs there, but if not, you could probably link an IMG tag to another location. Okay, cool. What else? But like Travel Window 2 is super awesome, especially if you have if you're playing a hunter. But even if you're not, Travel Window 2, and you want that one, not the Travel Window updated. Let's go ahead and load that up. When it loads, it's going to pay attention to what skills you have. So it's working its way through there. And then, there we go, Travel Window. So we can see, Exo says, I habitually mispronounce GIF in real life, and I'm so sorry. Don't worry about it, Exo. We all make mistakes. Okay, so this is Travel Window 2, and as we can see, I have a bunch of Moria milestones because milestones were on sale a while back, and we're on Treebeard, and I kind of made a vow that I was only going to make the run from 21st Hall to Anar Zemecum once. And so I have a bunch of Moria milestones, but also all my other travel skills that I've acquired. And so they're all here in one place, and you can definitely go into your skills page and just be like, show me my Moria stuff. And it's fine, right? It's fine, but this is just a very nice consolidation in one place. My only complaint with the travel window is that it redraws itself every pixel you move it while you're resizing it, and it's not great. But like if that's my only complaint with the plugin, we're doing fine. Excellent. Okay. So daily task reference, I find that I used to find that really useful. My character is kind of full with all the reputations that can be tasked right now, so I'm not using it very often. But if you have task items in your inventory and you're like, what can I use these for? Get daily task reference, use it. It'll be like, hey, you've got these things. They're usable for this. Now, if you're using neighborhood task boards all the time, then maybe it's not too hard to poke around and find which ones. But it's really nice to be like, okay, here's what it is, and here's who it can get me reputation with, all in one place. Delightful, lovely, super simple idea, and it really is a nice quality of life improvement. Alt inventory, if you have multiple characters and you have trouble keeping track what's where, I actually solved this problem mentally myself by just having some carry-alls that I put into shared storage, like my metals and crit items. Well, okay, the third bag is my crit items. Great. Here's all my crit items, right? So I don't have to figure out which character has them anymore because I have an abundance of carry-alls. But before I had those, alt inventory or Kiki inventory, some people prefer that, I think are the two competing show me what's on another character plugins. Reminders is super useful, again, especially if you run multiple characters. I have, each time we increase the level cap here, I'm trying to remember to push my gilding up for my scholar and my metalsmith, metalworker and my tailor, and having reminders just is really nice to be like, hey, you know that other character? Go make stuff, their cooldown is ready, or go get your universal crafting ingredients. Reminders is great. Waypoint, yeah, I could just, here, take a screenshot of this. I'm going to run out of time if I talk about this. It might be possible to look at someone's favorites. Anyway, there's a whole bunch of really cool plugins out there. And, you know, if this wasn't enough, hop onto one of the LOTRO Discords and inquire there. It's a common question, so you could actually just scroll back and see what people have responded to before. You don't have to just ask again, but people have answered that there as well. Any other that? Oh my goodness, your own adventures sounded super interesting. Like embedding your own game within Lord of the Rings, where it's like, oh, you're talking to this thing. Here's a completely different dialogue that we've just put together. So when you go and talk to Aragorn, this is what you see instead. It's amazing. I mean, it's a structure for making your own content within LOTRO. I think it comes with an introductory adventure in French, if not in English. But the idea of it is just amazing. It has its own advancement system, its own deeds, its own stuff that tracks based on what you're doing. It's the prospect of it is delightful, right? Like I get so excited just thinking that someone has put that effort into making a system onto which you can construct your own stuff. Like if you want to have this whole thing, storyline where you just run back and forth through the 21st Hall, you could do that. You could put that together in this. I think that's delightful. Mini Raid is an alternative system for looking at player health, party fellowship, all of that. I think it's one of several competing visualizations for the state of everyone's health, and that's really useful for me as a minstrel if I want people to not die, because the normal view of player health bars is just so spread out, I can't keep track. Foul map is just a variation of roving threat maps, but for chickens. It's great. If you like chicken session play, I highly recommend Foul map. RT plugin is great for roving threats. It shows you where they are. You can mark off where they are because roving threats don't change throughout the day. They're always in the same three-ish spots. So once you've found them, you can mark them in this map and then just keep revisiting them over and over. And then you just clear it for the next day. Theoretically, it has a way to share that information with other people. I think that may not be working quite right, but the plugin by itself is totally worth it even without that. Hitable Assistant was really inspiring for the deed tracker, and Galahad just did a great job with it, even though it's been largely outdated by the cheaper costs of doing the Hitbolt reconstruction. Once upon a time, I imagine that was a super lifesaver. Lyrical's great for pre-recording things you want to say and then just clicking a button to advance through them instead of typing them real time. So if you know you're going to be teaching a group of kinmates how to play Hobnanigans, get Lyrical, type in the Hobnanigans instructions there, and then just sit back and have a cup of tea while you're just going click, click, and not burning your fingers up trying to type the explanations to that excellent game. Okay, Exo, you had a thing before. You done any fiddling with metatables and or fire events when table gets changed? I have not. That's a place where my Lua knowledge is a little bit light, is metatables and all of that stuff. Like I can kind of follow the event registrations where for the custom add event, add callback and remove callback, where we're taking this thing, and if it's not if it's null, then we're setting a thing. If it's a thing, we're converting it to a table. We're downgrading it, all of that. Like I can follow the logic of it, and it's fine. But when I get to metatables, it's just I'm outside of my wheelhouse there. So it's yet another thing to look into. Unfortunately, because this isn't my day job, I don't have that that passive accumulation of how does Lua work. I just get it while I'm working on things. So if it's not directly related to a plugin that I'm working on, I just it kind of falls by the wayside, and it's like, oh yeah, that's a thing that exists. I should look into that someday. Dun, dun, dun. Exo says, a storyline where you run back and forth a lot. Shadow of Angmar epics have that covered. Well, there is that. We do joke about, like, well, we haven't seen Elrond in a while. I bet this next one's going to have us go back to Elrond, which is great if you have a hunter and kind of frustrating if you don't. Rocky says, I only see the minstrel buff in the compendium. How can I switch the compendium to your version? So I have not figured how to get the compendium to do patches well. And so for that, right now, just go ahead and... Hello, Raiders from Skymantic. Rocky, for now, just go ahead and go to the minstrel buff page. And you can go to the out of combat. You can just download it and install it manually. There's instructions here on how to do it. So there's instructions in that page on how to do the installation, but unfortunately I haven't figured out how to get Plugin Compendium to deal with patches, and maybe it wasn't ever meant to. Hello, Skymantic. Yeah, Rocky, do it in the browser. And if you have any problems with the current version, you can download the previous one under the archive. That one doesn't have the Soliloquy of Spirit stuff, but it also doesn't have the last-minute German and French changes that I did without vetting. So maybe they'll be better. So yeah, good luck with that. Okay, well, Skymantic, you've rated just in time for it to be 10 p.m. here in the Netherlands, which is kind of my stopping point. I've been going on about cool plugins that I think are cool because, someone was asking, Rocky maybe? No. Xing. Mr. Xing was asking what cool plugins I like, and so I just kind of went down a tangent there. But we went ahead and released an updated version of the Opaque Quest Tracker, this silly little thing I made as an accessibility toy, more or less, to make the quest area more readable against high contrast backgrounds. For instance, maybe you have a goose and you still want to read that text. As you can see, it's a little hard to read that text right now, but if we come on in to the Opaque Quest Tracker, load it on up, and suddenly, okay, I can see it, even with a goose in the background. Or if I need it to be a little bit more solid, I can do that. I can bump that up. So that's what we've been working on today. We just released a new version that finally respects the F12 hide the HUD key, and also has a little lock button where you can just unlock it and drag it around and then relock it. Cool. So that's where we're at. Looks like the release is live. Awesome. So if this is a must-have plugin for you, you can go ahead and download it either manually or with the plugin compendium that it's live there as well. And apparently, oddly, 4,700 people have downloaded that. You know, kudos to you. I'm glad that is helpful for you. That is awesome. A surprisingly high number of people are interested in an opaque window. That's great. I love it. Cool. So yes, that's where we're at. I think at this point, if you have any last minute questions or comments or concerns, go ahead and toss them into chat. I'm gonna take a drink of water, minimize some windows, and I'm gonna start winding down here. Oh, thanks, Little Redhead. Those are Tuesday streamers. Charlotte Skies will be back in several weeks. So for Tuesday, it's just me. But there's people on Wednesday, apparently. Spielberg says, can I change the writing font in this game? I don't like it because it is hard to read. Rocky has a heavy question. Well, if you want to type it out, go for it. I don't know if I'll have time for it, but we can always touch base on it next time. Spiel says, can I change the writing? So in some cases, yes, but not as much as you might want. So for instance, in your quest log, in the bottom, and you'll see this also on the quest bestower dialog, you'll be able to increase the size of the text. So here I'm just dialing it up to maximum, but there's not a way to change the font here, just the size of the font that is chosen. In your chat window, you have options for the font for each of your chat types. So for instance, if I create a new tab here, awesome, and I go ahead and set filter for say, and if I come in to say, and set that to 23 pixels, then if I say hi, we can see that's much bigger than normal. Let's see. So I don't know if that's really a good answer. So in some cases, yes, you can adjust the size of the font, but in general, you can't choose which font is being used, and in some cases, there is no changing. And this is something that SSG knows is a concern for the community. As people are upgrading from 1K to 2K to 4K monitors, the fixed size of the text is something that they are aware is causing problems. But if that is your situation where you're playing this on a 4K monitor, you could downgrade the resolution while you were playing and then upgrade back. So you could convert it to a 1K monitor for the purpose of playing, and then the text would be readable, but it wouldn't. I mean, it would kind of be a little silly because you bought a 4K monitor. So I get why people are hesitant to do that as well. All right, I'm going to dial my say back down though, because that was really big. I feel like that should be 16. Why is standard smaller? Is that normal? I don't know. Okay, so yeah, Spiel, hopefully that is an answer to that question. Let me know. Edelweth said, yeah, yes, depends on which tech. Yep, awesome. Edelweth is also popping in there. Exo says, please UI revamp. Let us import fonts. My number one wish. Now, Exo, I don't know how much I would get my hopes up. Fonts are very complicated beasts, and software can open itself up to all the... I suspect there's at least one security vulnerability by just allowing a random font to be imported. So I suspect they would not allow that, but perhaps choosing from a variety of fonts, or definitely scaling the font to the resolution of the screen. Those are things that seem much more likely to happen. Given that I have no inside knowledge on this, that just seems like a place I would go if I was doing this kind of thing. Rocky says, Excel says I like how the font size doesn't even fit in the drop down. Yeah, it's, there are little edge cases. Rocky says, how can I track the morale from the target? Target tracking is a little tricky. I believe that while a target is selected, like I've got a target down here from Better Biscuit Bureau, while they are selected, we can query stuff about them, but when they get unselected, weird stuff happens. And I don't know a lot about that, but I do know there's some discussion on the forums about that. So it is possible when the target changes to see, is it a target, does it have morale, that sort of thing, but to know constantly that the morale is changing, as long as you've got them targeted, you could keep checking once a second and just update whatever it is you're going to update. Not a problem. When that target goes away, your ability to query that information may also go away or get more suspect. So that's the one thing I would watch out for. But yes, you can know when your target changes. You can know the morale of the target if it's a thing that has morale. And you can just have an update loop going where once a second you just check and see, do I still have a target? What's its morale? So I don't know if that's a helpful answer for you, but that's sort of what I know about. Rocky says the 4K update from the UI should be released this year. I don't know if you're saying should as in will or should as in I hope, but I can appreciate both of those. All right. Exo says, are TTF files that risky? I think if modern day internet has taught us anything, it's that everything is risky. Every time you open up your system to allow something, you are adding risk. And so the real question is, who at SSG is both a security expert and a font expert and is willing to stake their career that there is absolutely no risk at allowing arbitrary imports of fonts? And, I mean, it's would be enough for me if they were to offer a variety of modern fonts to switch between, personally. Though I can appreciate it as a plugin developer, you definitely have thoughts on that subject. Worst case scenario, you could always post on the forums and be like, hey, as a plugin developer, if anyone at SSG is listening, these are the things I'm looking for in a font to display things on screen. Now, maybe this isn't a normal thing, like for quest text or whatever, but if you could include this in your future revamp, these ideas, that'd be great. No, Exo says it should be client-side. Absolutely. I'm not talking about a security issue from a server side. I'm saying you going onto the forums and saying, hey, look at this cool font I made. It makes it look all cool. Go download it. And someone imports it into their LOTRO, and that causes a security breach. I can't think of what that would be right now. I just know that there's an endless imagination involved when it comes to putting harmless-looking files out there and waiting for people to stumble across them. All right, Spiel says, thank you. Sadly, it is impossible to change the font for the ability names or quest names. I know, because it isn't the right font for the LOTRO theme. Yeah, unfortunately, personal taste doesn't come into it. Font size is the only thing we have right now. And yeah, just like Little Red Hat says, throwing it out there, the devs do watch the forums and just saying, hey, this is a thing that would make my ability to use the game better. Rocky says, EG7 have said something in this way. Absolutely. If you look at their investor presentation in their "in the future" no dedicated time section, they do mention that kind of thing for Lord of the Rings Online. That is promising, but it's also not promising very much. If you follow me, to say we will do something after 2020 opens up the entirety of time and space, right? So. Yeah, fingers crossed, but there's a lot that they want to do, and they have a finite amount of time and a finite number of workers to do it in. Okay, awesome. Thanks for that chat back and forth. I do appreciate you all throwing those things into chat, and here I have run out of time. So, if you have any last-minute things to shout into the void, go ahead and get them out now. Otherwise, I will be back here next Tuesday evening to talk about plugins and whatever else is on your mind more. Rocky says, maybe I should work for SSG. SSG is based in America, and I live in the Netherlands, and it is really complicated to hire people from other countries. There's all sorts of rules and regulations and laws in the way. So I think even if that was a good fit for me and for SSG, the practicality is I want to stay here in the Netherlands, and they are over there in New Jersey? I don't know, somewhere in Northeast America. And so that's just not going to work. Even if everything else was a perfect match, the location thing itself is enough to drive a wrench into the works. But I appreciate the confidence. Thank you. Okay. Where are my windows? Okay, so looking through my checklist here, and I think that is that. Oh, EXO confirms they only recruit in U.S. and only a few states. Yeah, there's like half a dozen states you could technically live in, but the reality is a company like SSG seems to, from the outside, have a corporate culture of in-person interactions, and I'm sure working in an office, like they haven't historically seemed to work at home. Doing so during the coronavirus was a change for them, and so throwing a wrench into that, but like, and now you have a coworker that you'll see for 4 hours because they're 6 hours ahead of you. At just it's asking quite a lot, and so there are plenty of qualified people in the U.S. to choose from. They don't need to go to someone who's just very passionate about plugins who lives in the wrong continent. Yes, Little Red points out, it seems they do want people who live within Boston commuting distance. Oh, is it Boston? I was thinking New Jersey. I must be thinking of something else. Yeah, absolutely. Because even if you are working remote, especially now during the deadly global pandemic era, being able to get to the office in a reasonable amount of time is a very nice feature. All right, that's enough about me talking about a job that I will not qualify for ever, although lovely though it would be. So that's all we're going to cover today. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration of LOTRO plugins and a bunch of other things. I do hope to see you next week, and until then, keep plugging along. All right, bye-bye now.